Hello friends. You can well imagine that this week has been a very full and turbulent week for myself, for this diocese, the Church of St. Boniface, its priests, its lay people, its religious. Also, I'm going to say, we've been in the news quite a bit, the Catholic Church in Canada. So yeah, it's been a full week. But God is in there somewhere, in there for sure, saying something to us and guiding us in a particular direction. We have to be attentive, discerning, humble and faithful before our God. Having said that, I also then want to bring forward, assure you that I am meeting with Father Réal. It's part of a continuing dialogue between himself and myself, in the nature of a personal relationship. I've known him for 12 years. And also a discussion, a dialogue between a priest and his bishop. Having said that, in the midst of all that was happening, there is also an event, an anniversary that took place this week, and you may or may not have noted it. It is quite prominent in the news, in the mainstream media at least, and that was that this past week was the 150th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 1, and which would be then the model for all the other treaties that would go forward. And it's on my radar because the Treaty 1 actually covers quite a bit of the area of our diocese. And so, when we would say, with a land acknowledgement, that we acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Oji Cree, the Cree, the Dene, the Dakota, all of that sense flows from the treaties. And it's of course also the ancestral home of the proud Métis people whose heart of that identity is here in the Red River. Having said that, what I have to say is, first of all, is that I realize that while I know a little bit about the treaties and what it means to be treaty people, all of us, what are the articles of the treaty, what was promised, one side and another, but also the spirit of the treaties, I just have to learn an awful lot more about it. And one of the things that spurs me to want to know a lot more about it is an inkling that there was a very different spirit, between the chiefs who signed the treaty and their people, and the representatives of the Crown, and all of Canadian society behind that. And I might even say all of imperial British thinking behind that. And it wasn't the same spirit. But I have to read more, listen more, maybe go to the office of the Treaty Commissioner. Anyway, I just have to learn an awful lot more about that, because as I say, I have a very strong inkling that there was a different understanding, a different approach that I'm going to say collided at the negotiation and at the signing of those treaties, and that two different spirits about the treaties, is still at the base of so much that we're having to live today, often fraught with tensions and misunderstandings and just difficulties of relationship between groups and even between people, sometimes even within the same family, around the dinner table conversations. Anyway, and residential schools are something that flowed out of the treaties. So I think we really have to go and take the time to, again, listen in solidarity, standing with the Indigenous people. Just listen. Listen so as to learn. Listen so as to take the time to inform one another and learn, so that we can come to a point where there is a single spirit about these treaties, a single sense, a single spirit about how we will go forward as treaty people, as people who are in covenant with one another. Now, another reason that inspires me to do this work, to take this time, to do this reading, to enter into those discussions, to just sit and reflect, is my grandfather. Now, my grandfather on my father's side, a gentleman called Mgr LeGatt, came from Brittany, part of France, poor part of France, in 1907. And he came all alone, and I think with about $2 in his pocket. What makes me think that is that he first went to Saint Rose du Lac, where there was other Breton people that he knew, and he worked on a farm for a couple of years, maybe 3, and got enough money to then go where there was still some land available, and that was near Saint-Brieuc, another place where Breton families had been congregating since and establishing themselves since 1904. And so he took out a homestead, 160 acres. There were conditions, so many acres cleared within such a time, building of a house, log house, building of barns, all of that. So he could take that land, to assure himself of a livelihood, and especially, I'm sure he was hoping for a better livelihood for his children and his grandchildren. But that land was for him to take because it had been taken away from the Indigenous people, the First Nations. That's what the treaties were about, in one spirit. And so, I have a lot to learn about the treaties, about being treaty people together, about being in covenant with one another. And a covenant relationship, I have to think through all the implications of being in a covenant relationship. But being treaty people is a covenant relationship. So as you see, friends, I have a lot of work to do to understand more fully. And I invite you to also do the same work yourself. Thank you.